Well, howdy doody, duties. You know, we've been doing a lot of talking here, but mainly it's to get you thinking. I'd like to have you think for yourself about everything we're talking about. You know, the other day I got an email from somebody that signed MO, that's Mo, I don't know if that'd be male or female, but they said that I'm talking too much about the Bible because they think the Bible is just passé. There are lots of works, a lot of printed works of different spirituality, and why don't I talk about that? So I thought today we'd cover a little bit of that for you, and I'd like to have you think about it for yourself. We won't go into the Bible because we've talked about that for the last few weeks. You already know how that came about and how many books there are and why they are and how many different Bibles, 143 different kinds of Bibles out there. Let's talk about Islam, the Muslims, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Catholics. They're all different. You know, you talk about the fundamental people and they use the King James Version of the Bible. And the Catholics, of course, they have the Douay version of the Bible. Well, the Islams, they only have one. That's the Quran. Now, what do you think about the Quran? And what do you think about the Islam religion? A lot of people don't understand all these religions. The Islam religion, the idea behind it all is to purge everything that isn't Islam. Now that may sound strange to you, but let's talk about the man that started the whole thing. The man called Muhammad. Well, first of all, he was a merchant. He traveled around the part of the world that he knew, and he sold and he bought goods. But he happened to have the good fortune of marrying a very rich widow. Well, you know and I know that in the Muslim culture, the women can't do anything without the men. They need a man. That's the rule. They can't go out. Why, even today in certain areas, they can't drive a car. They can't do anything unless they're accompanied by a man. So this rich widow married Muhammad, which gave him then freedom to do more of what he could do. He went all over the world. And if you read the Quran, you'll be amazed at the similarity between that and the old-time Bible writings. In fact, a lot of the things that are in there are the way that the women were treated before the time of Jesus. They weren't treated too well, you know. Like we talked about Moses when he took all the people out of Egypt. Why, the women weren't even counted because they weren't as important as the cattle. And they only counted the men and the boys. Well, that's the same way in the Islam culture in those countries. So what he did, as he went around studying, he was very astute. He studied all the religions. He studied Hebrew, Christianity. He even studied the Hindu religion. And he took what he wanted out of those things, and he thought about them, and they came up with the Quran. Well, I'm not saying it couldn't have been inspired. It could have been. It took him several months, almost 2 years, to completely dictate that book to his scribes so that they would have a guide. They also got to remember that in that part of the world, it's rather, or was, or rather a very bloodthirsty part of the world. It was controlled by warlords. And to emphasize his writings, he had an uncle and he had relatives that were very powerful people. And they made it so that the people that studied that, the people that believed in the Muslim faith there, the Islam faith, had to do it or else. Well, I don't know what the else would be, but I do know that the idea behind that whole thing is to control, keep God, Allah, foremost in your whole life. If you travel to those countries, and we've been there a few times, and we've even watched the merchants that'll come up to your automobile or come up to you and offer to sell you something, they all say the same thing. As Allah is my God, I swear this is true. This is a real artifact, or this is that. And you know it isn't. But as Allah is their God, they swear to it. Well, why can they do that? Because it's okay to do a little bitty lie if it's for the good. In other words, what Muslim teaches, if your intent is to further the spirituality or the religion, then anything you do is okay, if that's the intent. And that means the physical pleasures, the mental pleasures, whatever you do, if the intent is there to further the spirituality, it's okay. Hey, how about Mormonism? Now, Mormon was started by an old boy named Joseph Smith. And that was really a mystery and very mystical. The golden plates and the salamanders that led him to him, giant salamanders, I might add. And, you know, now there's a thing, when Joseph dictated his Book of Mormon, he did it in less than 3 days. He did it to several scribes. He wasn't a very well-educated boy himself. He couldn't do the good writing, but he just constantly talked it, and he interpreted off these so-called golden plates. And they wrote it down, and that's how that book came about. Jehovah's Witness, on the other hand, was started by a 14-year-old boy. Isn't that interesting? But the Watchtower people, they took over. They got kind of a committee going, and they took the whole religion over. So they got their teaching, and you probably get people knocking on your door every day, or at least once a week, saying, "Hi, we're with the Watchtower. Here's a free book." And you get a chance to read it. If you really want to know about that, there's a book called 30 Years a Watchtower Slave by somebody that broke away from the Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's very revealing. Oh, and I don't want to leave out Scientology and all the rest of these. But I do want to tell you something that's important. And if I don't do anything else, this is the most important thing I have to say. There are a lot of mysteries out there. And like Tan writes, if you've ever had an email from her, it talks about the mysteries, but it says, greater mysteries than these are to be revealed. Well, when it comes to truth, there are some basic truths that never change. They're real, they're true, they don't change. Religion, on the other hand, they try to make it fit them, and that gives them control and power. I don't want to be religious, I want to be spiritual. But there are 9 questions that we're going to be covering in the next few months. And we'll be in the Bible a lot, and we'll be in a lot of the other written books too. But out of these 9 questions, I want to read them to you. These are the questions of the ages. The first one is, what is the physical, spiritual, and moral state of man? Have you ever wondered? The next one, what is the state of man after death? What happens after we die? What and where is the hereafter? You ever thought about that? I'll bet you do a lot. And the older you get, the more you're going to think about it. What's the true purpose of man's existence on earth? Why are we here on earth? Why are we man? Why were we given dominion over all these things? Number 5 says, how can man know he's on his purpose? What are the effects of one's deeds in this lifetime? In other words, what you do, what is the effect of what you do? And what bearing do these deeds have in the afterlife? What are the best sources of divine knowledge? And how do I know what to believe? Well, I'm going to tell you right now what to believe. Don't believe anything you read or you hear from me or any book or anyone else. There's an old saying, you read 1 book and you get a little educated. You read 2, you're a little confused. You read 3 and you're frustrated. The more you read, the less you know. That may be true. I don't know about that. But I do know I don't want to believe anything. I want to know for a fact what's true. And what's true for me may not be true for you. But I want you to think about it. And if I can stir your thinking and make you think, I will have done a good job. And as usual, I like to end with this prayer. Lord, I give you thanks that you've kept me free from the cowardice that shrinks from new truths. And God, thank you for keeping me from being afraid or being satisfied with a half-truth. And most of all, God, I really am glad that you don't let me have the arrogance that thinks it knows all truth. Amen.